Inner states of reflection. Work has gradually to come between us and life, in such a manner that we begin to be able, at certain moments, to see the difficulties that we encounter, through the ideas of the work. This changes our relationship to external events, outer problems, material difficulties and disappointments, which takes a long time because such as we are, we remain totally identified with an outer realm, with people, with things and occurrences, with situations, feelings and reactions. In that sense, we are simply machines propelled by life. For a long time we cannot see how this work applies to our situation, and have nothing intervening. We have no kind of magical mirror or psychic lens through which to perceive things. So we are left naked and exposed to life, to circumstances, and in that, lack the proper shoes for the occasion, and any protective clothing. It is extraordinary what change takes place in typical life situations, when we bring the work up to the point of incoming impressions, which means that impressions, instead of falling directly onto us, pass first through the medium of this work. Once we are awakened and embraced by the strength of the work, we grow conscious to what it teaches, and in that, the impressions of life are transformed. They acquire another meaning, and it is then not the external situation that we think about and react to, but the ideas of this work to which we react. Life does not fall directly onto us, but passes through the medium of our work, where it then becomes a teacher. Guru emerges from the medium of work. When we are immersed among life-seeking people, we see quite plainly that they do not transform anything, that they always take life as an end in itself, which is going to lead, through some time-lapse progression, to a brighter future. They believe that something really good will come to them, if only they reach out for it earnestly. Such people do not observe their inner states, nor do they see that the most important thing for them is a change of inner state. The objectives of this work are to change our inner states, so that we cease to react mechanically to every event. This requires a shifting, some realignment of our point of consciousness, and that begins with self-observation. As this develops, we realize that it is not life that is the problem, but ourselves, such as we are in a given moment. Then one no longer expects that in some distant future everything will be so much better. We no longer lean on a timeline so expectantly, and become aware that as long as these different mechanical reactions, all of the different manifestations of chief feature, those intolerances, rigid and unquestionable attitudes, all forms of grievance, systems of making inner accounts, our habitual negative states, and unchallenged forms of imagination govern us. We cannot look towards the future in our present condition, willing it to somehow bring us into some better state. Realizing this, we begin to see what it means that one must not take life as an end in itself, but as a means to a quite different kind of end, which has to do with our own level of being, and all the states that arise from it. Consider in this fourth way work, how we might deliberately be placed into some external situation which is extraordinarily difficult, in order to see whether we can pass through it without becoming hopelessly identified. Certainly this would not be possible if we did not bring the work up to the point of incoming impressions, then deal consciously with the situation by means of what we understand our work ideas. Without some practical and tested knowledge of what self-observation really means, no one can do this work. We cannot do in life, but we can do this work, to a certain extent, as long as we feel it and know about it. Then through doing the work, we may indirectly be able to do something in life, but only indirectly. Remember that if we change ourselves even just a little, then we make room for others to change too, even if we only change ourselves temporarily. If at some characteristic moment we can to a degree remember ourselves, and through that, bring this work up between life and ourselves, we shall then, according to our level of being, be doing the work, which will impact other people. It is only this indirect doing that is possible, but we must perform the work, because we, within ourselves, see the necessity of it, because we feel the need of it. One must never do this work in order to help other people, as that becomes identifying, enabling, and for us, can be ennobling. Examining now self-observation, the objective of self-observation is to get behind yourself, to become more internal to yourself. The external part of us, the mechanical or even automatic part of us, is the lowest side in scale. So that when a person is very identified with external things, they are in the lowest part of themselves. In the basement of their house, where the lowest corresponds to our most external. The moving parts of centers are the lowest and most external parts of ourselves, so here live a great many small I's, which only understand in a diminished and very limited way. When we live in these I's, we are fast asleep with regard to any work, and become filled with the cares and anxieties of life. However, behind these I's, and more internal to them, are bigger I's, and again behind those, still bigger I's, and so on, until the influence of real I can begin to be felt. Some people tend to live too far in front of themselves, really outside of that self, and cannot reach essence because of the hypnotism exerted by small, outwardly turned I's. If this goes far enough, then something like hysteria can begin, hypertension, and panic attacks. Every act of attention, of concentration of mind, tends to put us into a more internal position with regard to ourselves. This is one aspect of the meaning of self-observation. Self-observation puts us behind ourselves. Observing I, however, may be externally situated. It could even be one of these external I's, and therefore nothing deeper. Then self-observation has no strength, and cannot penetrate inwardly. When self-observation really begins, then observing I passes gradually inward, in the direction of real I, and as a result of this gradual penetration inwardly of observing I, it sees more and more, because it gets behind more and more in ourselves. The higher can only observe the lower cannot observe the higher. Or put differently, the inner can only observe the outer can never observe the inner. As we deepen our consciousness through observing I, we can see more and more clearly what lies outside or external to observing I. Observing I cannot penetrate in this way more internally, unless it is aided by emotional feeling. If we do not think it worthwhile, then we cannot really observe ourselves except only superficially. Catching a glimpse of ourselves occasionally as through embarrassment and self-consciousness, which may deepen the emotional valuation of this work on oneself through self-observation. A person may, for example, see that they lie in a certain way, when according to their pictures of themselves they are quite certain they always speak the truth. Many examples can be found of this, where people genuinely believe in their own narrative, until they can see the reason behind these constructions, which often requires external help. If such a sudden glimpse becomes possible, even temporarily, it means that we have observed ourselves from a deeper level and managed to get behind personality in some small way. What happens after that depends upon the quality of one's own sincerity with ourselves, and the valuation that we give to this work. Regrettably, the tendency is to justify oneself. In which case, having caught a deeper glimpse of ourselves, we lose that in the uproar of self-justifying and entitlement. We are told to observe self-justifying, but not to go along with it. Certainly we would be unable to stop mechanical self-justifying when we catch a glimpse of ourselves, but that does not mean that we agree with that self-justifying. All self-justifying leads to no result in a work sense. To justify oneself means that we make things right with ourselves. If we do not go with self-justifying, perhaps only half go with it, half believe in it, then we leave, as it were, a point in us which can grow and lead to another such glimpse of ourselves. This is like gradually breaking through some crust that we take as ourselves, the outer coating of false personality. If we, however, justify ourselves, then that possible point of growth is at once arrested and turned the wrong way around. Remember, the more we find ourselves self-justifying, the more certain we can be that we are lying to ourselves. False personality is very powerful and will maintain itself at all costs, by every method possible, one of which is self-justifying. It's nothing personal and simply a question of survival instinct. The action of self-justifying will be to prevent the observing I from passing inward. It will prevent us from seeing anything more deeply about ourselves. It will keep observing I on the surface as a sort of toy, that we play with occasionally. Everything in us fights against real self-observation, so unless observing eye gathers around it other eyes that wish to work, that can hear something of the meaning of this work, then it remains without any real strength. For this reason, if the significance of work continually grows cold in us, observing eye will remain only on the surface, ineffectual, as cosmetic jewelry, say our ochre robe. The relationship between the power of observing eye and evaluation of this work is made clear and formulated in the diagram illustrating observing eye, where work eyes, deputy steward, and real eye are illustrated in vertical scale ascending. To try to observe oneself from anything but the work side is useless. Observing eye needs to be surrounded by feeling and emotion of work for it to penetrate through the outer crust of personality. We must observe ourselves from what the work teaches. That is the only way in which observing eye can follow the path it is destined to follow, the path inward. The effect of the passage inward of observing eye is that we gradually become aware of things that we previously knew nothing about, because we were in front of those things, so they acted as it were from behind us, as puppet master. If observing eye deepens, then those things of which we were unconscious as they lay behind us, now move in front of us, where we can see them more clearly. You can only see the things that lie in front of you, and nothing that lies behind you. This is how it becomes possible to be more conscious of oneself, through a movement inward. To become more conscious of ourselves, it is necessary that the consciousness of observing eye must increase. Observing eye is a part of consciousness of self within us, not turned outward via the senses, but inward, toward our being. It can be referred to as an organ of sense, provided we say it is an organ of internal sense, and of self-consciousness. This point of consciousness exists in everyone, but remains as a rule totally undeveloped or atrophied, as in the stories of our pineal gland. It remains undeveloped because it is not supported by necessary knowledge, the ideas and emotions of higher centers. Life certainly does not increase it. The work can increase it, and is designed to do so. And it is for this reason that observing eye must be supported by work eyes, by eyes that feel this work, and desire it deeply from the marrow of our very being. Simply to observe yourself, without any deep feeling for the work, can lead only a short distance. To feel or think one feels the work deeply, and not to observe themselves through it, is again unlikely to lead anywhere. Great faith in this work can certainly help, but one has to believe in its teaching, and know it to be true through personal reflection. Not accepted blindly as mere doctrine. Self-observation is the foundation of this work, and so has to often be reflected upon, considered and attempted, so as to develop that inner mirror, the looking glass of Robert Louis Stevenson. It may take a long time to begin to observe ourselves from what the work teaches. It may take a long time to make the connection between self-observation and work, but if there is anything real, that connection will inevitably begin to be made through time. Then self-observation ceases to be something theoretical that we must try to do because we are told to. It becomes an accessory and a life skill. It becomes something that does not interrupt, but accompanies our earth walk. When this bond ceases to function, we know instantly that we are asleep. Self-observation must be uncritical. Consciousness of self must remain neutral. We do not observe ourselves in order to criticize and apportion blame, as if we do so it will immediately cease to be self-observation, and lead to internal considering. When self-observation begins to accompany us, then we will notice that it is not critical, and becomes simply a slight degree of consciousness. It is not a critical consciousness, a judging consciousness, but awareness and perspective. Our spectacles or contact lenses do not judge what we see with them, they simply aid and improve our perspective. Through this awareness, we gradually see more. We recognize something that was said before, perhaps even often, or see that we are doing something that we have done many times before, that we are behaving like this or like that, having these thoughts that we've had before, or those feelings that we felt before. However, now, things suddenly become clearer and leap into focus. This awareness does not accuse anyone, it says nothing, but simply shows us what is going on in ourselves. It may make us feel uneasy, but that uneasiness does not come from observing eye. The work eyes behind observing eye may make us feel uneasy. Many other things could be said here, however, the main point is to comprehend that self-observation must not be critical any more than a light that you flash over a dark room is critical of what it falls upon. The object of self-observation, as noted in the work, is to let a ray of light into ourselves. When light is let in, many things begin to change of themselves organically. It is the light of consciousness that begins to change things, and for that reason it is often quoted that light will cure us. Think for a moment about the phrase, "the light will cure you." Understand that we cannot cure ourselves, but there is something that can cure us as long as we can gradually move toward it. No light can enter, however, unless at all costs we keep the work alive within. All ideas, all the thoughts, all memory of it, and that is our task. To tend the flame of that inner altar, Agni, because by doing so we are able to expand the light. Instead of taking thought for ourselves, we have to take thought for the work. Then everything else will follow in its own time. We should not work for results. Our task is always to increase the light of this work in ourselves, and to keep it alive amongst ourselves.